Faith, people of God, is not to think positive. Faith is not to speak positive. Faith is not a mental agreement with what the scriptures are saying. For a longest time, we have thought to have faith is to think positive. And the reason we think like that is because we have heard a lot of motivations in the pulpit rather than receiving the gospel. Motivation will teach you positivity in life. Yes. Faith is not a product of a man's imagination. Because if it is a product of your own imagination, then that will simply mean that your revelation, it will be coming from flesh and blood, not from the Father. If faith is not a product of a man's imagination, then what then is faith? Faith is a seed that when God's voice is heard in a man's spirit. Tell your neighbor, say, faith is a seed that when God's voice is heard. Yes. Faith begins when God's voice is heard, and it ends when obedience is fulfilled. It has a starting point and an ending point. It begins when God's voice is heard, and it ends when obedience is fulfilled. Meaning that if you do not yet hear the voice of God, that individual cannot have faith. And I know that it's easy for you to think you've been hearing the voice of God in a generation that has been hearing motivation. Because the word of the Lord has not been yet revealed. That is why we are having a faithless generation, because God's word is not yet revealed. Faith is a seed that when God's voice is heard in a man's spirit,